Project proposal for today, the greenhouse on Folsom from Stanford University. Please join me in welcoming the Cardinal Affordable Real Estate team.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren. This is also Lauren. This is Alex, Aldo, Jose, and Jorge. And together we are the Cardinal Affordable Real Estate Initiative. We're excited to be here to present to you our project, the greenhouse on Folsom. Before we get into the details of the project, we wanted to just share with you our vision for the greenhouse and why we believe so strongly in this project. So as of the last count, there were over 6,400 homeless individuals in San Francisco. Without any sort of support network, these individuals get stuck in a cycle of illnesses, substance abuse, and homelessness. And as a result, this homeless population, which makes up just 1.6% of the overall population in the city, actually utilizes over 25% of all hospital resources in San Francisco. Fortunately, the city has identified this as a problem, and as a result, San Francisco is unique in the broad array of financial resources available to developers of affordable housing, and specifically developers of housing for the chronically homeless. So, supportive housing, which is designed to rehabilitate chronically homeless individuals, is actually a proven method. And yet, despite its demonstrated effectiveness at reducing the residents' dependence on these highly expensive hospital services, it's not a widely understood or widely publicized model. So with that in mind, our vision for the greenhouse is to develop a 100% supportive housing project. We assert that this is a cost-effective and also morally desirable way to alleviate homelessness in the city. Furthermore, because of this project's prominent location within the Trans-Bay Redevelopment Project area, we believe that there's really an opportunity here. This will be one of the most highly visible developments or supportive housing developments in the city and perhaps even in the nation. And so we believe the greenhouse has an opportunity to really set a precedent for more supportive housing projects into the future. As we progress through our presentation today, three key themes will emerge. These integrated themes will touch on every element of the project through its entire life cycle. First, the greenhouse on Folsom is an innovative housing model that is designed to effectively address homelessness as well as empower its residents. Second, this project has sound and sustainable financials. It draws upon a broad array of financial resources that both maximizes the available resources as well as mitigates the risk. Third, this project reinforces a green lifestyle, both for the residents as well as for the surrounding community. The building itself integrates a number of novel green design elements, and further, we believe that sustainable design touches all phases of the project life cycle. So I know many of you are familiar with our project already, but I'll provide just a brief overview of the details of the project. The greenhouse is located at the intersection of Essex and Folsom, which, to orient yourself, Essex is located between 1st Street and 2nd Street. Along Folsom Street, this is part of the Trans-Bay Redevelopment Project area. So currently the redevelopment agency owns the site and will release an RFP on the site later in June. The building will be 8 floors of Type 1 concrete construction comprising 73,000 feet. It will contain 119 units, 90% of which will be efficiency studios, the remainder of which will be 1 bedrooms. The building will also contain 3,600 net feet of commercial space lining Folsom Street, and then another 6,800 feet of space reserved for our supportive services as well as our resident common areas. CARE is going to partner with Bridge Housing as well as Community Housing Partnership to form a uniquely qualified development team that blends both expertise in affordable housing development with supportive housing operations expertise. Rounding out our team will be David Baker and Partners Architects as well as Nibby Brothers General Contractors. As for timing, after we are awarded the deal later this year and enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement with the agency, we'll begin a 2-year pre-development period in the first quarter of 2009. When pre-development is complete, we'll be in construction at the beginning of 2011, and we expect the project to be fully stabilized by the 4th quarter of 2012 after a 24-month construction period and very brief lease-up period. So here's an overview of what we're going to cover in our presentation today, and we'll start with site selection. Our site is a rectangular 16,000 square foot site with an irregularly shaped open space area to the rear. number of affordable housing potential sites in the city. We selected this site, Block 11A, as our site because we believe there are 4 really strong reasons why we should use this site. First, we wanted to be part of the Transbay neighborhood transformation. There's a lot of energy surrounding the new Transbay redevelopment area, with the planning already underway for the new transit hub and also the Heinz Pelly Tower. Second, the existing and planned amenities in the neighborhood helped us to achieve our green design objectives and also to meet our goal of providing a positive living experience for our residents. Third, the agency is going to lease the land to the developer under favorable lease terms, which makes developing a modern supportive housing project financially feasible in this neighborhood with increasingly high land values. And finally, because reducing homelessness and increasing the stock of affordable housing is such a priority to the city, this project benefits from favorable zoning as well as an expedited entitlement period. So I'm going to pass it off to my colleague now, Lauren, who's going to talk about the supportive housing model.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the population we serve and our services model. The residents of the greenhouse will be referred by the Department of Public Health's Direct Access to Housing program. This program identifies chronically homeless individuals that have mental disabilities, physical disabilities, or substance abuse problems. They then refer them into supportive housing. So these are really individuals that are facing severe issues, both in the form of the homelessness and in the form of these disabilities. So why do we believe that this is an important population to serve? First of all, there's a real need. As Lauren mentioned, there's over 6,000 homeless individuals in San Francisco, many of whom are facing these disabilities. Second, this population really has very few viable options. Traditional housing hasn't worked for them, and they generally don't have family connections to fall back on. Finally, this is a population that imposes a high cost on the city. Generally, these residents represent a disproportionate use of high-cost city services. So use of emergency rooms, residential rehabilitation, mental hospitals, prisons and jails, and shelters. So we put in place a clinical supportive housing model. This model integrates medical services, psychiatric services, and intensive case management on site. We partnered with an experienced service provider, UCSF Citywide Case Management. Citywide Case Management has been working with this population for 22 years and works with 30 developments within San Francisco. Our staffing model includes 5 clinical case managers, a clinical supervisor, a psychiatrist, and a nurse practitioner. Case managers will develop long-term relationships with the residents and provide counseling services, substance abuse counseling, case management, and employment assistance. So why do we believe this is a good model? Supportive housing has been proven to be effective in a number of ways. First of all, it provides a stable housing outcome. Nationally, supportive housing developments have seen that after 2 years, 75% of residents remain in the housing development. Of those who have left, 50% have left for improved housing outcomes such as market rate housing. Second, this model doesn't just provide a roof to residents, it's really improving their health and employment situation. So for example, the San Francisco Direct Access to Housing program has seen preventative health among residents increase. At the same time, medical emergencies have decreased. They've also seen earned income increase by 50% and employment increase by 40% at the developments where there is employment services on site. Finally, this is a cost-effective model. When residents move into supportive housing, they tend to decrease their use of other high-cost city services. In many cases, this decrease in cost actually offsets the cost to the city of supportive housing developments. So this is an example from a 2006 study of a Denver, Colorado supportive housing development. And they found that the supportive housing cost the city $14,000 per resident per year, but the decrease in services that they saw for each resident was $16,000 per resident per year. So that more than offset the cost of the development. So we really believe in this model and in the experienced provider that we put in place. I'm also going to talk a little bit about community and community integration. So one of the things Kara did is attend a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. This is a committee group that advises on the Transbay development in general and on this supportive housing development. A few of the concerns that came up, first is the safety of the neighborhood. Will this development impact the safety of the neighborhood? Second is the building appearance, how will this fit into the neighborhood? And also the community is really interested in the success of the program. If it's in their neighborhood, they want it to be effective and they want it to be successful. Finally, we wanted to ensure that we were really providing value to the community and giving back to the neighborhood. So we worked these concerns and issues into our proposal. In terms of safety, we made sure that there was a 24-hour desk clerk and a sophisticated lock system. We also made sure that residents' common spaces were private, that there weren't benches or common spaces on the sidewalk. In terms of appearance, we used San Francisco design and incorporated creative, decorative elements where they were attractive and cost-effective. We are also very invested, clearly, in this program's success, and we think that the proven model of the supportive housing, as well as the experienced service provider, is really laying the groundwork for that success. Finally, one of the things we did to provide value to the community is to choose retail tenants that would really serve the neighborhood. So one business, potentially a cafe that the neighborhood can use. Another thing we're thinking about for our second business is a doggy daycare. The SFRA is thinking of a dog run space near this. So these are both businesses that the neighborhood can use and get value out of. We also anticipate that there would be a lit storefront at night for the cafe, which both provides additional community feel and also increases the safety in the area. So I'm going to pass it on to Alex to tell you more about the design.
Hi. So we truly believe that this project will be a flagship development to help guide the future of supportive housing. And so with that in mind, our foremost design concern really was on this idea of responsive design. And so we chose a streamlined and efficient concrete structure. We chose a streamlined and efficient concrete structure, a U-shaped podium with a rectangular tower, because we felt that this provided us the best solution for accomplishing many of our design goals and also help keep costs down. And by incorporating subtle design features throughout the project, we ultimately make this building unique and exciting and something that will most definitely be a bright spot within the community. So within this umbrella of responsive design, we really felt that it was important to include an architectural connection with the community. So using traditional SF forms, we lined the facade of the building with these bay windows, and to add our own unique touch, we actually added corrugated steel panels along these columns. And of course, we're always mindful of our green objective, and we found that using recycled shipping containers for the paneling material would be both environmentally friendly and architecturally stimulating. We also wanted to develop a model conducive to creating a sense of community among our residents. So we achieved this by designing highly centralized and connected open spaces that really drew our residents out of their individual units and brought them together as a group. And as it's called the greenhouse, we also did everything we could in the design process to ensure that our residents could live a green lifestyle that really complemented the green elements of the design of the building itself. So there are large open spaces complete with resident-run garden in the rear, as you can see. And the planning guidelines call for 16 square foot of open space per resident. We actually provide 55 square feet, which is actually quite impressive considering our site is only 16,000 square feet total. We also incorporated small but important features like a fitness room, which could help the service spaces in terms of physical therapy sessions and that sort of thing for our residents. We also have an enclosed bike parking structure that's part of our open space design situated along Essex. Actually can't see it in this picture, but this bike parking also uses the recycled shipping containers as a roofing material to kind of tie together this with the building. And another important aspect of green living is light and transparency. Especially in the context of supportive housing, we felt it was important to include this kind of idea of transparency, as well as a literal sense of bringing in light into the community. So we encased much of the common area in glass panels. We punched out skylights along the roof of the podium area. And this really provided as much light as possible to these spaces, and it created a visual connection with the outdoor spaces. And we really felt that these outdoor spaces were just as important to our design as the interior ones, so we actually spent a significant amount of time planning and designing these open spaces for our residents. And because it's a supportive housing site, we were also intent on designing for safety and security. So we strategically located the building manager's office in close proximity to the lobby, the open spaces, and the common spaces. And as Lauren said, there will be a 24-hour desk clerk, and we've included a double lobby to provide an extra layer of protection. By orienting the building towards the rear of the property, we also get the added benefit of creating a more secure and private space for our residents. And this is good for both the residents and the community, as it is more comfortable, I think, from both sides. So, here to get a better feel for what the building will look like, some floor plans. First floor, you can see the light blue retail along Folsom. The darker blue is the lobby, mid-block Folsom, and then the green area is the common spaces. The second floor was a little trickier in terms of circulation because we tried to include all three types of spaces, services spaces, residential spaces, and common areas. In this, the common areas, we made sure to have circulation right off of the lobby because we felt it was important to get our residents into these spaces and using these spaces as quick as possible. The service spaces are separated by a doorway leading to a separate corridor, provide a little bit more privacy for the residents who are going to be using them. And these residential units along the rear of the property in the purple are actually beneficial in their location on the second floor. Because they're larger units, the residents will probably be the disabled population in our building, and they'll require more intensive care and have more direct access to the service spaces. And then the third through eighth floors actually will be identical. They will be stacked on top of each other, and they consist of 18 studio units and then one bedroom to accommodate more disabled residents. And so here we have some walkthroughs into the lobby. This is our double lobby. And then you can see this would be the desk clerk. We kind of come around, and we actually get right into our open spaces for our residents. And as you can see, this open space connects directly with the outdoors. This is a small courtyard for our residents to gather. Small garden there. And then here is more developed open spaces, a fountain, some tables, and into a more comfortable, smaller resident lounge. Also a view of the garden. And so here is second floor, walking out of the elevator. Immediately to your left, program spaces. Could be for meetings, speakers, more structured program space. Also a connection with the outdoors. And then as we swing back, you can see that doorway there would be the corridor to the residential area, the services area, and that would be the residential area. And into here, a smaller, more intimate meeting room, also overlooking our open space to create that visual connection. And to get a feel for our units, this is into a one-bedroom unit on the 3rd through 8th residential floors. You see a small dining area, and then the doorway back there is the one bedroom. And then as we get into the studio units, these range from 300 to 320 square feet each. They have bay window punch-outs to give the residents a little bit more space, bring in some light. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Aldo, who's going to discuss our green design.
Excellent, thank you. So let me say first of all that when you start thinking about construction, there is no such thing as an environmentally beneficial building. Just by the nature of construction, this will take its toll on the environment. To put it simply, the best green building is no building at all. So, that being said, what we're actually trying to do when we talk about green building what we're talking about is mitigating the environmental impact of producing a building. We at CARE had an additional constraint in that we were very much looking to make the building as cost effective as possible. We have very, very real cost constraints in the development of the project. So when it comes to the approaches that we used in the building, we went for cost neutral. We also didn't try to reinvent the wheel. We went with proven and established techniques, and we leveraged existing building practices as outlined by Build It Green and the U.S. Green Building Council. Based on the designs of our plans, we actually believe that the greenhouse will earn a score of 170 using the Build It Green Point rating system. While we are not planning to go and file for LEED certification because of the additional cost involved in that, we believe that the greenhouse is LEED certifiable at the gold level. So just a little bit more detail into the Green Point rating. Achieving a score of 170 is actually a very significant achievement for the greenhouse. As you can see, we should use a darker color there. Our score far exceeds the minimum proposed or existing levels for San Francisco and for other Bay Area cities when looking at multifamily buildings. Some of the primary drivers behind the score are our housing density, that we had over 100 units on such a small plot of land. We also exceeded Title 24. Our contractor gives us an estimate by about 23%. We also use extensive open space and landscaping. There's open space to the rear of the building, as well as smaller open spaces along Essex. Across the street from Folsom, we're within a half mile of Yerba Buena Gardens, which is one of the most premier parks in the city, and we're 2 blocks away from the proposed 3-block elevated park that's going to be part of the Transbay Terminal. And speaking of the terminal, this is transit-oriented design. The site lends itself to a lot of advantages. The primary one is that we can leverage the full resources of the Transbay Terminal. There is no place in the Bay Area that you can't get to from our site. We can go from North Bay, we can go as far south as Gilroy, East Bay, you name it. In addition, our location in the Transbay neighborhood gives us access to the resources that are already existing in the area. In order to achieve our environmental goals, we also use a diversified approach in incorporating green elements into the building. You can see all the different categories here that we use. I wanted to focus on just a few of these features. For insulation, we're actually planning to use Radiant Guard bubble paper insulation. Not too many folks have heard about this, but it's a really novel idea for insulation. It has a very high R rating insulation factor, and all it is bubble paper with radiant foil in between, laminated into one piece. It's very, very cost effective to the tune of less than 10 cents per square foot. And very, very effective. We also examined the use of solar panels with the greenhouse. We decided to deploy a 70 kilowatt DC system on the rooftop of the greenhouse. We went through in our analysis and came up with two approaches. One was to buy the system outright and run it ourselves, which was actually a very high NPV activity over the course of 15 years. But we felt that being conservative in our financials, that it was more prudent to use that money elsewhere. And instead, what we're going to do is we're joining with Solar City, which is the installer and runner of photovoltaic systems, into a purchase power agreement. What this does is that it reduces our investment cost to zero, and it also allows us to still take advantage of the solar energy that's produced by the PV system. And for open space, you can see a little bit of the garden in the back with Alex's drawings. But we're planning to deploy an array of earthbox planters. And these are pretty novel ideas. The earthbox planters are vegetable gardens, or vegetable boxes, that are used throughout the world to produce high-yielding vegetable crops. We feel this would be very beneficial for just the look and feel and the environment around the building and for our residents. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Jose for financing.
Thank you very much, Aldo. So Jorge and I are going to talk to you a little bit about the finance and the feasibility of this project. And first, I want to talk to you a little bit about the sources and uses in our project. First, I'm starting with the hard costs. For our budget, we consulted budgets from many projects of this type that have been built, and we wanted to be very conservative in order to guarantee the feasibility of our project. We can see that we have a hard cost per square foot of $350, and we're trying to put a 10% hard cost contingency, which is 7% contingency and a 3% contingency for material escalation, because we know that some materials have been rising their prices, and we want to be conservative also in that sense. We have our soft costs of construction of about $4.5 million and a soft cost contingency of 10%. And finally, we have a developer fee of $1,200,000, which was capped at that amount by the MHP. From what you see here, we have used up plenty different amount of sources. I'm going to speak specifically now about the pre-development, which is $3 million. We had two different options for the pre-development. We had an enterprise loan, which is given for green projects and environmentally friendly projects. But we decided that it would be less expensive to use a loan from the agency, from the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency. And even though we wanted to expand our different sources in order to have less risk, we decided that in this case it was much more cost effective to use the agency's loan. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the development costs. Our major development cost is a private loan. As you can see, it's of about $25 million, and we consulted with many banks, and we found that even though the economic conditions are not very comfortable to find loans for other type of projects, for affordable projects it's not that difficult, because banks in California have to fund at least a specified amount of this type of affordable housing projects. So we found with the Silicon Valley Bank a 4.5% interest 24 months loan. We wanted to be more conservative again, and we're using a 7.5% interest in our calculations, and that's the largest amount of our development source. Then we have a small allocation of the tax credits from California, and we have an AHP grant, which is usually between $6,000 and $8,000 for our per apartment per unit. For our project, it's a little bit more. It's $10,000, but it was capped at $1 million. And we are the last part that we're using is provided by the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency. If we go to our permanent sources, we also decided to use the 9% tax credits. However, we know that it's been very difficult to find investors to buy these credits, so we decided to talk with the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency, and they already put them in the agency queue. So we are very positive in that we'd be able to get them. We are also only using the federal tax credits because we know that the state tax credits are being it's being very hard to find investors, and we're using an 89 cents yield factor, which is a very conservative yield factor again. We're using the AHP grant that I talked about, and we're using an MHP supported loan of $8 million. We decided not to go to the general pool, but to go to the supportive housing pool, because the general pool is being very competitive. Try to address a question that will be asked afterwards. We already talked with the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency because we know that it's going to be very difficult to get the MHP funds, and they guaranteed us that they are going to give us those funds if we don't get the funds from the MHP. Finally, the GAP loan is going to be provided by the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency. We didn't, even though we have tried to guarantee our different sources, we know that we have to build a backup plan, and our backup plan is with 4% tax credits. Just to give a couple important facts about our backup plan, we had 100% eligible basis boost because the average median income of all our population will be 20%. And we used a lower yield, 83 cents, because we decided to use the state. If we decide to go to our backup plan, we decided to use also the state tax credits. So I'm going to leave it to Jorge for the next part of the financing.
Thank you, Jose. I know it's been a long afternoon and we're almost done, so I encourage you to take a look at this because it's a different project since a supportive project instead of an affordable. The ongoing operations are much more complex. So why are they different? To start, an affordable project will have a mix of units at 50%, 40%, or 30% of AMI, while supportive housing, and in this case ours, has 100% of 20% AMI. So to start with, it's a much more complex operating structure, and I want to walk you through what
what the financials of it look like. So we have two different bucket of users. First of all, the building operations, which are the normal operations which you would usually have in any multifamiliar building like we saw before. But we also have a different bucket which is for the services that Lauren discussed previously. So how are we going to fund for this? Well, two sources of income would come from the tenant rent and from the retail rent that we have. And then our partners are making a long-term contract with the DHP, which is the Department the Department of Public Health, that has is working in conjunction with the Mayor's Office of Housing to offer a local operating subsidy program to projects like this of supportive nature, and they have an operating contract to support the gap in our operating expenses, and also a services contract to support our service provision. And then medical will also, as part of our budget, but not of our cash flow, because it pays a direct reimbursement for the medical expenses that our tenants will need. So it's also unique in terms of the and the details, and that's why we're sharing a little bit more of the details, especially in payroll. It's a little bit higher than what you would expect on a project of this nature, because we have a 24-hour clerk. In maintenance, it's also higher because our population is different. It's chronically homeless. So expect more turnover and also potential more damages to the building, and we're accounting for that. And also our reserves are higher. Our vacancies are 12.5%, which we consider instead of the required 5%, because we are also being conservative, as was discussed in the financing for the project. So this cost translated to our monthly expenses per unit once stabilized. As you see, the bottom two bars, the green and the brown, would cover roughly 35% of the overall monthly expenses per unit. However, this includes 500 of the services cost. And if we take out the services cost and just the operating, it will cover roughly 50% of the operation, which is very efficient for any project of this nature. And the rest would flow through the local operating subsidy program from the city of San Francisco. So in summary, on the financing part, we believe that this building and this financial structure provide the utmost in affordability for our customers, the chronically homeless. We've used a broad array of resources as much as we could find, but we also tried to mitigate the risk, as Lauren said in our introduction. And we believe that this financial structure will provide the sustainable operations of our building in the future. So to our closing remarks, I give the microphone to Lauren.
So to wrap up the presentation today, I just want to highlight for all of you what differentiates the greenhouse from other affordable housing proposals. First, we've assembled a top caliber team. The combination of Bridge Housing with its development expertise and its strong reputation in the city, combined with Community Housing Partnership with its incredible supportive housing expertise, as well as its status as sort of a rising star in the affordable housing development community in San Francisco, combined to create the highest quality and most talented development team we could assemble. Second, CARES used an integrated approach to providing an innovative housing model, to developing a diverse financing plan, and to incorporating novel green design elements into our building. Third, this proposal benefits from superior underwriting. CARES due diligence process involved consulting with key players in the industry, with collecting multiple data points. The forecasts and the budgets that we've used have been thoroughly vetted. They reflect current market conditions and also the cost of building a green, highly service-intensive housing project. We've also identified the risks in the project and developed strategies for mitigating these risks. And finally, we understand that conditions are going to change and that our forecasts may not materialize. So we've included a number of contingencies in our budget and in our schedule. We've developed backup financing plans. And finally, we've performed a number of thorough sensitivity analyses to really bracket the risk, the financial risk that this poses not only to the developer but also to the city. And finally, This project can and will be a reality. The feasibility of this project does not depend upon the world changing. This project is feasible today. CARE is confident that a project similar to this is going to be developed very soon. And this project is going to be a flagship supportive housing project with the potential to set a precedent for more supportive housing projects into the future. And so with that, I just want to thank you all for your time and invite any questions.
Thanks very much, folks. Questions from the jury?
Yeah, hi. I like your project a lot, and I do have a question again on feasibility this time. You mentioned using MHP and 9% tax credits together. How is that possible?
So we've gotten this question a number of times. It's a new combination. So it's rarely been used in the past, but it's just now recently been approved for use. So there's actually a project that Community Housing Partnership is doing called Parcel G, where they're going to implement this program. But it's a natural question. We should have mentioned that. It's new because in the past you weren't allowed to combine those two.
Okay.
I have a question. Kind of an ongoing discussion in supportive housing and housing for chronically homeless is scale, and that it's very, very difficult to do a project like this at this scale. And CHP certainly has been involved in all those discussions nationally. Did you talk about that as being an issue, and what did you come up with?
Yeah, as a trade-off, so maybe Lauren can help me with this. So I'll start just by mentioning, there are two conflicting goals here. One of them is to build the best supportive housing project we possibly can. The other is to actually be able to do this, which means to win the RFP. So the RFP is requesting 100 to 120 units. So while CHP would argue, and there are a number of supportive housing providers that would argue that the optimal number is probably closer to 100, in order to be awarded the project, we felt that building closer to, or proposing anyway, closer to 120 was probably strategically the best way to go. But I don't know, do you have any additional?
Just one thing to add too is there's also a trade-off where you have to consider how the cost of the services scales. So you need kind of a certain number of residences. I'm sure you've thought about this in order to offset kind of particularly the psychiatrist and the nurse practitioner, the kind of more intense medical services, having them on site. So that was one advantage, even though it's kind of harder to build a larger scale project from some cost perspectives. That is one advantage of having more residents and more units.
I'd like to ask a little bit about transportation. Number one, I see that the project in this location doesn't really have a parking requirement, and that whole section of San Francisco is really zoned that way. Did you provide any accommodation, though, for delivery trucks to your retail or staff parking, or just enough parking to, service the building, I guess?
So there's no parking.
Okay.
Number one. So we mentioned favorable zoning. This site, it actually has a maximum, and this is similar for most projects in San Francisco. There's actually a maximum parking allocation you can build. There's no minimum. So as far as retail and servicing, it's a small retail space, so we don't anticipate a lot of truck deliveries. Essex Street is actually off the main kind of path of traffic and provides for space for deliveries. As far as staff parking, we're just not providing it. Again, one of our main goals for this project was to be financially feasible, and we just didn't think that providing a space or two of parking or using up open space for that was consistent with our goals for the project.
And there actually is access for deliveries through a retail corridor.
In the building, right?
In the building.
Okay.
Along
It's on Essex towards the stairwell.
Okay. As a second part of that question, will there be any provision to help subsidize the transportation costs for the tenants?
It's a good question. I don't know if you've...
We haven't thought about that in general. I do think there's some kind of, if they are going to any off-site services, I think there was some allowance for that. But I don't think that there was an allowance if they were kind of...
Okay.
It's something to think about. One of the things we didn't touch on too much in our presentation, but it's more in the book, is the idea of job training and rehabilitating our population. And it happens in two stages with supportive housing. So in the first stage, it's really, this is kind of triage. It's getting people into permanent housing, and it's getting people stabilized. So you don't anticipate a lot of travel on and off site. I think as you progress in the building, and hopefully as these residents are rehabilitated and starting to move into more formal job training programs and starting to get jobs, then something we would need to think more about.
Go go ahead.
Well, I think it's a great project as well. I'm also impressed because, well, you're very fortunate that the city of San Francisco is so supportive with its dollars as well as its public policy. So that's a tremendous benefit that that you have there. I think one of the concerns over the life of the project, I think there probably isn't too much doubt that you could raise the capital to develop the project, but the fact that the city is also a critical source of rental assistance for the project and source for the services for the project. Those are essential elements for this type of development. So knowing that the city's commitments are there long term will be very important to any lender or investor on this project. So can you speak to how the city is documenting and committing those resources?
The way the LOSP funds work is you enter into, I'm probably going to get the words wrong, but you essentially enter into 9-year contracts, but you do have to go through the reappropriation process each year, which is just part of the overall city budgeting process. There's really no way around it because you would have to change everything in the city as far as budgeting. But you enter into a 9-year contract. We've talked to the DPH about this issue. They've said in the history they've never had a project where it lost funding, but it is absolutely an issue. It's something that there's debate right now about how to address it from a kind of mitigation of risk perspective. So there are two ways around this. There are two schools of thought on this. One is a lot of developers are trying to provide this kind of transition subsidy or transition reserve within their overall budget. And so over time they accrue for, say, the first 10 years of the project, they accrue a reserve in the event that something happened, when that contract turned over in 9 years and they lost funding. The problem with this approach is it just adds cost. So then the city is not only funding this project, but it's also funding the added cost of reserving for some potential problem down the line. So the way the agency is currently proposing addressing this is to have a pooled fund. And so in the event that a certain project loses funding or something goes wrong, there'll be some sort of insurance to developers as far as accessing other funds or having something to fall back on. And also in the proposal, you may have seen, we showed a sensitivity analysis as far as, or kind of a financial analysis of what would happen if we were to lose our subsidies. What, if worst case scenario, we were unable to get any support from the agency, what that financial risk would be to the developer. And it was, worst case scenario, it was $3 million. But in that event, this is something we've talked about with the agency. They feel that they would be able to step in. If we lost something like 50% funding and transitioned some of the building to 50% AMI housing, there might be some sort of operating loss in the meantime.
So we've actually underwritten most of the local operating subsidy deals, and it was very difficult to get through. But people have faith in the city enough that they're going to stick to the deal. The pooled reserves, nobody can figure out how to make it work. So it's really actually unlikely because you have different limited partnerships that own different projects. Mm-hmm. But my question is, did you put Bridge and CHP together, or who put them together?
We've gotten this question also. We
It's
actually started...
a little bit different cultures.
Yeah, so we started working primarily with CHP. And then, this is a real project. So they're starting to think about who they would partner with to submit a response to the RFP. And right now, they actually are in discussions with Bridge. And I couldn't guarantee that that's the partnership that's going to actually submit the proposal, but it's something they've talked about. And again, it's something I tried to address in the presentation is, Bridge is obviously the best, arguably the best affordable housing developer. An affordable housing developer with a very strong
dangerous statement.
Present company.
And but Community Housing Partnership has this expertise in dealing with supportive housing specifically, and supportive housing is not something that Bridge has traditionally done. So combining those two really creates a strong team, I think, and I hope that they submit together in the RFP because I think they'd be a really great team.
Questions from the audience?
Oh, can I say no?
Sorry, Rich. Go ahead.
You do notice their letters from Bridge and CHP are exactly the same?
We leveraged our resources.
Questions from the audience? All right, thanks again. Well done. I was remarking to someone on the Berkeley team earlier this afternoon that watching these presentations really confirms for me how much I slacked off while I was in school. I still am in school, so I guess that means that I still am slacking off. That concludes the main event for today. We are now at a phase where I'm going to invite the jury to retire and make some decisions about our 5 awards for today. I will confess we have seen deliberations last somewhat over an hour in the past. I am going to try to marshal their determination to reach some decisions sooner than that. We are right now at a little bit past 4:30. We do want to see if we can hit a 5 o'clock time for making awards announcements, so I would encourage you to relax, continue to enjoy some refreshments, enjoy the view. We will at least be out until 5 o'clock, I imagine. I'm going to ask the jury to join me. There's a set of chairs out in the reception area, out by the windows, formed in a circle. So I'll ask the jury to join me there. If you still see us there at 5 o'clock, it means that they are still deep in discussion. So apologies in advance for that delay, but we do hope to get back to you as close to 5 o'clock as possible. Thank you.
Do a smoke thing.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Watch for the puff of smoke.
Can we send white smoke coming up?
Habemos papu.
Everybody, we took a little bit of time to make some decisions, but rest assured, I think this was reflective of just how carefully the jury considered your proposals. None of these decisions were easy, and I can attest to that through my sitting in the discussion. So again, thanks in advance to the jury, and we'll be recognizing them in a few moments too, for all the time they took to review your proposals and discuss our award recipients today. So what we're going to do now is we're going to issue 5 awards. We're going to make awards for each of the 4 scoring categories, and then we're going to have an overall first place recipient. What I'm going to ask is for the category awards, if I could have one representative from each team come up to receive your award certificates, and then for our first place overall winner, you all can come up and receive your certificates at that time. Okay? So without further ado, we're going to go in order from lowest weighting to highest weighting in the 4 scoring categories. Starting with community support, and I know that some people out there, particularly in the business, will say that community support is a little more integral than a 10% category. If you cannot get your neighborhood and your municipality to back you in a project, it's going to be a lot more difficult to build than you would imagine. So it is not to disrespect support in the sense that we gave it 10%. We do have some other categories that needed to be weighted as well. But we did consider it in the challenge evaluations. And so this year's community support category award recipient is the UC Berkeley team. Next category is project design. This is a category that, personally in my interaction with teams as well as with jurors in this event, this is the 3rd year I've done this event, I am the most fascinated talking to design folks because in a finance capacity, frankly, I don't get the opportunity to learn as much about it as these architects, urban planners, and urban designers spend putting together projects that are both visually appealing as well as functional. So project design remains a critical component. It is to some extent woven in with environmental stewardship given the design elements associated with that scoring category. We do have project design, though, as a category of its own. And this year's category award recipient for project design is the Cal Poly team. Next category is environmental stewardship. And as I was commenting to the jury a few moments ago, Bank of America takes very seriously the increasing role that green building and environmental sustainability are playing in commercial real estate development and in affordable housing. We do have a publicly announced commitment in terms of our lending and investments to support green building and environmentally conscious initiatives generally. And we do view the housing challenge as an opportunity to further that initiative of ours by making environmental stewardship the highly weighted category that it is for this year's event. We first introduced stewardship last year. It was weighted somewhat smaller. It is weighted more this year. We will adjust as we go along for future competitions, but we do believe that environmental stewardship is here to stay both for this event as well as in affordable housing. So with that, we're very pleased to award this year's Environmental Stewardship Category Award to the UC Berkeley team. Finally, we have project finance. This is a bank. We take finance seriously. And obviously, without the money, a project cannot get built. We have seen some very sophisticated modeling in these proposals this year, as we see in every year. And certainly in affordable housing, what distinguishes this particular development type from commercial real estate generally just is how complex these projects are financially. Many different sources of funds. Operational feasibility is a challenge. Many different requirements that different sources expect when they're willing to devote their money to a project. So project finance really is a challenge. It does speak to the name of this event. We do consider it the most important scoring category as far as the bank is concerned. This year we do have a tie among our project finance award recipients. The first award recipient is the Stanford team. The second award recipient is the Davis team. Now for our first place recipient. I am not going to share the numerical scores at this time. I will be giving you updates later on in terms of receiving your specific rankings in the categories, aside from what was evidenced from our first place award recipients in the categories. But I will go through our runners-up as well as our overall Housing Challenge first place recipient for this year. This year, our third runner-up is Poly Collaborative Housing. Only first place, I'm sorry. We should come up. We have a tie for runner-up, or first runner-up, which would make Cal Poly Early second runner-up. Our tie for the runner-up this year is the UC Berkeley team and the Stanford team. This year's Low-Income Housing Challenge first place overall recipient is the C group from UC Davis. And all of you may come up to receive your certificate. Very good job. Very good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I would be remiss, both on behalf of the bank as well as on behalf of all of our participants this year, if I did not take a few moments to recognize the members of the jury who devoted very many volunteer hours to interact with these students, to provide advice when that advice was requested, to offer a critical eye as well as a deliberative voice in evaluating these proposals. These folks do this for a living, and then they took their spare time to do some more of it on their own. And so not only do we value our relationships with these individuals as a bank, but this we consider one of the main advantages of the challenge to be a really beneficial mentorship and almost apprenticeship opportunity for the students, not only in interacting with their developer partners and other partners, but also with the members of the jury. So with that said, I would like to take a few moments and individually recognize the members of the jury this year, and we have certificates for those folks as well. You need not come up, I will come to you, but I will introduce you here from the mic as I pull out certificates from my bag. So starting first from Satellite Housing is Cindy Hevens.
Oh, thank you.
From Enterprise Community Partners, Mr. Rich Gross. From Bank of America, Ms. Nancy Thong. From First Community Housing, Mr. Tom Iamazing. From the City of Fairfield, Mr. Mark Kaiser. And from SB Architects, Ms. Marguerite Lonergan. I also want to recognize Mr. Steve Harriman, another architect who participated on the jury who could not attend today. I acted as his proxy and offered some comments to the jury in the course of deliberations on Steve's behalf, but I do also want to thank Steve for attending the event and participating this year. Folks, with that said, that concludes our Low-Income Housing Challenge for 2008. I'm sure we will all be back here again in 1 year's time for our 2009 challenge. Have a good weekend, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and evening in San Francisco. And again, thanks very much to the jury as well as to all of our teams for participating this year. Thank you.